Hello, today we're going to talk about the difference between a standard ERP system and a fresh ERP system. In traditional ERP systems, well, we're familiar with them, aren't we, really? The ERP systems for the retailers, for the manufacturers, for the distributors, we're familiar with how those work. But if you look at fresh ERP, we're dealing with growers, with packers, with shippers, with distributors, with marketeers, all of whom have very different requirements of an ERP system than a traditional distributor, manufacturer, retailer. The differences can be highlighted across 9 major headings. The first of which is in the fresh ERP world, we're dealing with highly variable raw materials. In a traditional ERP system, let's face it, you order 10 widgets at £1, 9 arrive, put them into stock, 1 is on back order, that 1 eventually arrives, the order's fulfilled, the supplier's paid off, away you go. Very simple. In the world of fresh ERP, it's very different. You order a ton of potatoes, and the potatoes arrived covered in mud. So the first thing you have to do is wash them. Well, who's going to pay for the washing? Then we have to grade them to see what we've got. And you might find out of our ton of potatoes, we've got 400 kilograms of grade A potatoes, which are good enough to go to the supermarkets, 200 grams of grade B potatoes, which are okay for making chips, but the remainder, the 150 grams of grade C potatoes, are only good enough for making soup. And we then have to pack them and process them and ship them in different ways. It's a much more complicated process. And if you look at it from a diagrammatic point of view, with a view to grower returns, i.e. how much you're going to pay who for these potatoes, this is grower returns or grower liquidations or consignment accounting, it's called many things. It is an exceedingly complicated model, as you can see. The potatoes come in, we wash them, who's going to pay for that? We grade them, we're ending up with £200 a tonne for the supermarkets, £170 a tonne for the chips, £140 a tonne for the soup. How are we going to work out who to pay? Well, this is even more complicated when you take account of the fact that the potatoes have not just come from one supplier, they've come from 3 different suppliers who formed a pooling to supply to us, to process, to ship. So when we work out who to pay, we must work out exactly what each grower gets. Traceability is an equally complex area, but for the fresh produce sector, it is an absolute key area. Having a good, easy to use traceability system is fundamental to fresh produce companies. LINKFRESH has some wonderful business analytics to help us analyze what has gone where and where has stuff come from. So we can readily see and readily trace speedily low cost analysis of traceability, low cost recalls. The next area to consider is timeliness. Traditional ERP systems work in day and week numbers. Well, given that your tray of strawberries can go off in a matter of hours, having a system that plans to day and week numbers is really of no use to you. What you actually need is a system that can cope with hours and minutes, and better still, a system that works in true real time, as does LINKFRESH. Third-party products is an interesting area, isn't it? Because here we have some oranges. We're going to book them into stock. We're going to move them around the warehouse, pick them and place them. We're going to put them into a cold room to store them. We're going to put them into a ripening room to ripen them. We're going to keep an eye on quality control. And we're obviously going to take the value into the general ledger because they're our stock. Then lo and behold, another batch of oranges arrives. And these you don't own, but you still need to put them into stock. You still need to be able to move them around the store. You still need to put them in the cold room to ripen them, to quality control them, but the very last thing you want to do is to put them into general ledger. They're not your stock. They mustn't appear in a general ledger. But what you will do is you will issue a servicing charge for handling the stock from the supplier. The next area you need to look at is inventory allocation. Because when the forklift truck driver goes to collect his pallet of strawberries, he sees that the pallet of strawberries is off. They're not good enough to be shipped. So he needs information in real time to tell him where in the warehouse he can get the same grade, same quality, same accredited strawberries to ship to the supplier on that truck that's going out at 3 o'clock to the supermarket. Because you know what? If the supermarket doesn't get them from you, they'll get them from someone else. Instability of supply, particularly in England where we have plenty of rain, is always a problem in winter. If one of your growers is completely wiped out and you're not going to be able to get your leeks, potatoes, mushrooms or onions, you immediately need to know who else can we source the product from to the same quality, the same standard, the same certification, because your customers won't wait. And of course, margins are key. The whole fresh produce industry is working increasingly on wafer-thin margins, and having really effective and visible cost control is fundamental to the profitability of your fresh produce business. So managing packing costs, transport costs, processing costs, alongside the actual fresh produce costs is absolutely paramount importance. Indeed, sometimes the packaging costs are more than the actual fresh produce costs. So, that brings it into stark relief that we need to be able to keep a good, visible eye on packaging, processing, and shipping, which of course we do. Finally, we must look at flexible ownership models, and I don't just mean the fact that some of the oranges you own and some you don't. Let's go back to our diagram, where we see that our potatoes have come from 3 different growers in the pool. It's complicated enough to work out what to send each grower, but then you have to take account of equity share, because grower 3 is a farm that's owned by Harry, Ron and Mary, and the payments have to go to these 3 individuals. And of course, there are different amounts of payments to be made. So it's an exceedingly complex area that traditional ERP systems will not get near, but LINKFRESH is designed to address perfectly. So, 9 areas where LINKFRESH is unique, where traditional ERP doesn't really stand a hope. And who do we do it for? Well, we do it for some of the best in the world. Many companies here you'll know, and increasingly major corporations are selecting LINKFRESH as their platform of choice. Perfection Fresh, one of the largest fruit companies in Australia. Westphalia, the largest grower of avocados in the world, are rolling it out across 4 continents at present. Del Monte, a name you'll all know. Total Produce, one of the largest providers of fruit and veg in Europe. And Giamara, the largest privately held fresh produce company in the States. So, all these good people are choosing LINKFRESH. Shouldn't you?